Um, As chair, I should point out, last meeting I was not here, but I have watched the videos of the meeting, and I listened to all the comments that were made, so I think I'm prepared to consider that application. We have no alternates. We have one absent member, so we have 5 members tonight. That's a quorum, certainly. The first order of business is the approval of the minutes of the May 20th meeting. Anybody have any comments or corrections?
I had 3 items, Dave.
Okay.
Line 141, this is not a huge issue, but line 141, there's a portion of it that reads, "within the zoning commission." And what it should read is, "within the zoning regulations." It's not an issue of the commission, it's an issue of regulation. So it's a substitution of the word regulations for commission. And then line 201, anybody who looks at it will see the date's missing the month, which I believe is July. Excuse me,
Oh,
yeah,
yep.
July 10th. I don't have them in front of me, but, so 201 needs the date completed.
Right.
And then 228, another, not a huge thing, but 228 has the time of a motion that has got to be wrong. It's, it says 7:07 PM.
We went
It's
back in
got to be
time.
at least 8:07. And I think 9:07 is too late, so if the 07 part is right, it's probably 8:07.
We,
This one,
Yeah.
907
no,
over
it can't
here.
be 8:07 because a motion at 8:22
Right.
occurred before that.
So maybe just take the time
Maybe
out?
we strike the time. I think
Okay.
the sequence is pretty clear.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yep.
That's fine.
Any other changes?
No, those are my only comments. And
That's good.
I suggest,
Wait a minute.
recommend adopting
Yeah, go with
these minutes as they were submitted with those changes.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Further discussion, Kevin, do you have something?
No, I can't find mine, so it's okay.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Minutes are adopted. Okay, the first order of business, we have 5 public hearings tonight. In the interest of expediency and all of that good thing, please don't repeat things if you can avoid it. The first application is 1921 from McLean. Could you read the call, Mr. Secretary?
Application 1921 of TJ Donahue Jr., Esquire, Agent, McLean Affiliates, Inc., petitioner for a text amendment to Article 10, Section K, Table 10, bulk area and site requirements of the Simsbury zoning regulations regarding maximum height senior housing.
Mr. Chairman, members of the commission, I'm TJ Donahue and I represent the McLean, and we're here with an application for a text amendment to your zoning regulations tonight. I'm very mindful of your workload here. We're going to have a short presentation. We're going to present, Eric Daleen is going to present the application, the concept, and what McLean's doing and why they're doing it now. He's a consultant to senior living facilities regionally and throughout the area. A former native of Avon, he now lives near Boston. And then Tom Daly's here from Mylone and McBroom. He's the engineer for the project. He's going to show you the location of the project, how it works with the rest of the community. And he's going to also give you the findings of a balloon test, which was requested to be made, which was made, which shows that the project will be virtually invisible from any other piece of property besides the tract that it's upon. You're all
Okay. Excuse me, TJ. I'd like to point out to the audience here, we have mics here that are hooked up to SCTV to record the process here. Those mics are not picking you up unless you really project and come to the podium to speak. Go ahead.
Very briefly, by way of definition, McLean is a signature institution in town. It's a continuum of care facility which takes care of our sick and our elderly. It has 182 beds, 67% of them are skilled nursing. It has 27 cottages, 48 apartments, and 13 villas, and has a hospice group that has 200 people annually taking advantage of that service, and over 16,000 meals a year are served. It's, according to Wikipedia, it's the second largest employer in Simsbury, and it's, we'd be hard-pressed without it to be who we are as a community. We come forward now with, again, 10 years later, to grow the institution again, and Eric Daleen will come up and tell you about the concept and what we're going to do.
Good evening, Eric Dalen from One Point Partners. So as TJ said, I'm a consultant for the nonprofit senior living industry throughout New England. And I've been working with McLean over the last year or so, trying to position them for the future to continue their mission of providing care and homes for the seniors in Simsbury and beyond. After a year or so, what we've come to is that what they most need is a central location in their campus. It's a campus that's grown over time, and what they need is a central location to provide dining for the entire campus. Meals on Wheels is also provided out of this new dining facility, a new fitness and wellness center for the entire campus, and additional housing for both growing their stock as well as replacing some of their current homes that are aging out and need to be replaced. Part of locating this centrally is to minimize the impact on the overall site, to provide short covered distances, short travel distances for the existing residents. And as you can see, when Tom shows you the layout, this is the need for a small footprint and the clarification on the overall building height required.
Good evening. For the record, Tom Daly with Mylon and McBroom, and I know we presented to you informally, but based upon that meeting. So the proposal, this is an aerial photograph of the neighborhood, which gives a little better context of what we're talking about. And what you'll see here is we have Hopdale Country Club. Over in the left-hand side, we have Burkholder, the main McLean building. What you can see is the proposed building we're doing right up here is what is really addressing the text amendment. And what this rendering is supposed to do, and there was a lot of conversation with the commission, is where are the view sheds of this particular building? And what we did was we did a couple things, but ultimately this graphic shows that there's just a very small sliver of view shed that only if you're on the golf course can you actually see up through the throat to the proposed building. There's a large wetland buffer adjacent to us, Washburn Drive, large wetland, wooded buffer here, and even the way the course things, this small threshold of throat there. And what this commission asked to do was the study. So we actually went out with town staff and flew balloons in terms of the elevation. So what we did was...
Excuse me, could you just point out Washburn Drive again?
Sure,
on that diagram?
Washburn Drive is right here.
Okay, thank you.
And really the critical home was this last house on Washburn Drive. It's about a little shy of 600 feet. So we went around and what we did was we flew balloons. We put balloons at 1, 2, 3 corners of the building. And then we went around. You virtually cannot see it, and the town staff verified this, that the only place you can really see this building is actually if you're standing on the golf course, looking up through. And what we did was we actually had to fly the balloons. So we put 65-foot balloons throughout on the 3 corners. And then the one location at the end of the tee, we did throw some additional balloons because we couldn't see it. So we actually threw a 95-foot balloon, which represented the top of the tree line, and actually threw about a 130-foot balloon just so we can walk around the entire property and make sure we weren't missing it to get the orientation. But what the study found was the only view shed you have, and the house on the end of Washburn, there is a wooded buffer between there. And we were out there actually before the leaves came out. So they actually there is a small break in the wood line. They can actually see Burkholder. but as you can see, this view shed is, unless you're on the golf course looking straight up into the site, is really the only view shed you're gonna see.
And that tree line won't change? The
No.
buffer that's there?
No, the tree line will change, we'll have a clearing limit there, but the
Right.
the tree line by them, there's no change.
Okay,
So the tree line, all this tree line you're seeing here, the trees in the golf course, and then
Yep.
the buffer at the end of Washburn, no modifications
there will
associated
still
with
be a
that.
buffer.
Correct.
So those trees are on the property of of McLean,
Well,
that you're referring to as the buffer, they're owned by McLean? They're
well,
owned by the
McLean owns Hot Meadow Country Club.
Right, but
So,
they're not the homeowners. trees.
they're not.
Okay.
Well, there's a little backyard they have, but there is also on our property also. So it's common. It's both properties.
It's a typical neighborhood, but they're all R40 lots, so they're 40,000 square foot lots, the house is in the middle, so certainly part of that tree line will be on their property.
Yeah, it's about half and
But
half,
not much
I
of it.
think. If you go out there, there's a stone wall, the golf course, and then we have a wooded buffer, but a lot of it actually, I think about it, a lot of it is actually on their property, not ours. But we're not doing anything down here. This is farther up. So as you can see, and I think that's what the commission was asking us to do, is what does this look like in the landscape?
Well, and because of the size of the building, it's one thing for the balloon test,
Yeah.
but because of the size of the structure, if there is going to be additional clearing.
Yeah.
So if you're saying there is going to remain a buffer or a tree
Correct.
line from McLean, from that side, even just to the golf course.
This green is representing the proposed clearing limit. So you can see there's large swaths of buffer to be remained. So we are going to do some clearing here, but this represents post-development buffers. Okay, thank you. Be more than happy to answer any questions the commission may have.
Thank you for doing the balloon test.
It was very useful.
It was very helpful.
Yeah, and town staff was great. They were out there the entire time with us.
So, were you out there?
TJ was out there, I was out there.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Yep.
All right. And so, you're telling us that building's not visible from anywhere in Simsbury other than the golf course?
That's our opinion. Correct.
Okay, thank you.
It's hard to imagine because of the size.
Yeah.
You know?
But it's tucked into the wood line. And then there's this, and it it's the wetlands. The wetlands maintain this huge buffer. We can't go into them. It's a hill. So, yes, it was a good study. It served its purpose. And on the backside, behind Burkholder, it's so far away that you can't even see it.
Happy to tell the commission that the process was, they started working on their project, they realized they had to do it to grow and to sustain themselves. We came to town staff, we looked at it, we talked about it, we understood the limitation, realized the preference to have verticality in a senior facility because you have elevators instead of having to walk further and further. We went to the planning commission, we went to the design review board last time before we were with you, and they were very appreciative of it and endorsed or liked it. They are very anxious to get their opportunity to participate in the site plan review and comments on that. And then we went on to the planning commission where it was approved and found to be consistent with the plan of development. They found it was consistent with the plan of development because it's additional housing for sectors of housing that are needed in the community, and also a recognition that it is a business in town and that economic development wants our businesses to be able to grow and expand in place. So
But planning made a comment that it would fit the POCD, the plan, but they're asking if you would be providing affordable units?
they did have that, and we're talking about that, and we will have some ideas on that as we come forward.
Okay.
The facility in itself has multiple kinds and segments of housing, so some of the housing there will be design affordable, and some of it will be a little different, but we will be addressing that question as we come forward with our presentation.
Because they did say that specifically, having to do with the plan.
So your presentation tonight, somebody else is going to speak to that? Is that what you just said? What presentation were you referring to?
When we come to the site plan, back to,
When they come back.
I got it.
I hope.
Right. No, I got it. That'll be
This
a
is
good
the
thing.
text amendment,
I got it. Yeah, right.
referencing the height.
Yep.
More questions from,
Not on the height, but when we get to the site plan, it'll be interesting to see what the new flow is through the site.
okay.
I have two more questions.
It's The main floor will be the central corridor with the amenities off of it between the Burkholder and the main
Yeah, I'm
building.
talking auto traffic through the whole McLean, because you
Well-
kind of are you take over part of the old road.
Yeah.
Yeah, so,
There's going to be parking under, but we'll have there'll be a lot of design involved in that.
How many housing units are there, residential units in that building? I
In the
had the
Burkholder?
impression this was, no, not Burkholder, the new building.
In the new building, 75. As many as 75.
And could you, I thought when you came and we talked about the concept, I can't find a note on this, but I thought there was some indication that this tax status, this building wasn't going to be covered by the 501c3 designation for the rest of the McLean.
Your assessment policy in town and throughout the state is that apartment buildings are taxed as apartment buildings, and that the only real safe harbor you have on taxes is for continuing care facilities.
Thank you.
Okay, does anyone in the public care to speak to this application? Everybody's here for something else.
Sorry, TJ.
He's happy.
Yeah, I don't think.
Yes, are we ready to close this application? Close this public hearing?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we close the public hearing on application 1921.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 5-0. Okay, application 1922 of Charles Houlihan. Mr.
Okay, application
Secretary.
1922 of Charles D. Houlihan Jr., agent Michael and Jacqueline Roberts, owners, for a special exception pursuant to Article 7, Section C.1, the Simsbury zoning regs for a home occupation allowing for short-term bed and breakfast rental of the property located at 45 Old Farms Road.
And this is a continuation of the public hearing that was opened last meeting.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Charles Houlihan for the applicants. Good evening, commissioners. Good evening, neighbors. This is the continuation of what we started before. We have been responsive to some of the issues that were raised before, and we would like to go through those if we might. There's a question before. We had not received any response from the Farmington Valley Health District. The Health District has advised us that they do not become involved in bed and breakfast applications unless the number of bedrooms is increased. There is no increase in the number of bedrooms. There is no construction in this application. There is no expansion of the existing bedroom facilities, and therefore they are not involved. As we indicated last time, the Sewer Commission has no objection to the application. There was a typographical error in our original submission where we talked about 6 guests. In fact, the home, the main part of the home, can sleep 10 people. And it has the lot and so forth. And we asked for approval for 10 guests in the home. So that it does not alter the parking situation. There would be a maximum of 6 spaces still. There was discussion, and we referenced our application in the last hearing, said that it was an occasional bed and breakfast. And we were asked, what does that mean? And so we've put some dimensions on the application. We believe that it would be reasonable to have an average of 6 nights per month for a total annual visits of 72 guest nights. Some months would be less. Some months, like May, for instance, when there are graduations and families want to rent a home to celebrate the graduation, would be greater. But over the course of time, we would average roughly 6 nights per month and 72 over the course of a year. We talked about traffic last time. A number of issues were raised. We believe that it is easy to accommodate 6 guest cars. The owners have 2 garage spaces, so they could park in the building. But the 6 cars would be feasible to park and to leave. there was discussion about the angle of the driveway itself. The suggestion was made that the angle actually was deep, and so that you would be coming out. In fact, it's a fairly flat surface, and we've taken a number of photographs to indicate that. So the concern that was raised is that there would be a deep, that you would have to climb out of this property, but that's not that way, and this is relatively flat. We have taken a look at the traffic dimensions going different ways, and the one that I've just showed you looks toward the northern route and shows that, there's a fair line of sight that we see from that direction. I have another photograph that also shows the perspective. You're exiting the property and taking a left, driving toward Simsbury Farms. With cars coming, with clear visibility to see what is there. We have another photograph showing the view if you take a right out of the driveway, going south toward Farms Village Road, and showing that there is adequate vision for there as well.
But both of those last two photos show this is located between two turns. If you go right,
Yes.
there's a turn. If you go left, there's a turn. So there are some concerns, there are some blind spots there
They're not blind spots for here, but it is on a curve
on both sides.
on both sides.
Yeah.
And a very good depiction of the overall outlay was in the letter that the town received from the Simsbury Police Department. There were comments made that it's a dangerous area. And the police department noted that in the past 5 years, there have been 0 accidents at that intersection. And on the second page of the police report, you may have this in your package.
Yep, we got that.
But there is an overview which shows the curve. It's a gradual curve, and the house and the driveway are located, right in the middle where there's vision going both north and south directions. And there haven't been any accidents in the last 5 years in that area. And there, from time to time, there are parties at their house, there are cars going in and out. There's not been any accidents, no traffic issues. The one issue that makes some sense is that there should not be any backing out of this driveway. It hadn't occurred to me, having been there and driven out, that anyone would attempt to back out of the driveway. But that issue should be addressed. And one of the things that the Robards are going to do is post a set of house rules. It'll go on the refrigerator. There'll be a notice to guests what's acceptable and what is not acceptable. backing out of this facility would not be acceptable. We are also considering posting a sign. We're not sure where the proper location should be yet, whether it should be at the end of at the mouth of the driveway, or perhaps on the side of the barn, informing people that are parking there that they should not back out of the driveway. And I think in the ordinary course of trying to be a safe driver, you would tend to drive straight out of this driveway rather than to back out. At the last hearing, we talked about, the issue was raised, this is really kind of a boarding house, which is a new, well, untested provision, I guess, of the zoning regulations, and that it's a prohibited use. But the prohibition is limited. The prohibition is it's prohibited unless allowed. The application for special exception is exactly that. It's an application so that it would be allowed, so that it's not prohibited if the commission deems this an appropriate use of bed and breakfast. But as a practical matter, boarding house, I think you tend to think of individual rooms being leased in a home. And that's not the business plan or the model that they have. They expect that family units or friends in family units to gather in the house. The house will be, the guests will be all part of one group. It will not be different groups in different rooms staying there. It is a full house occupancy and not individual occupancies. And there's also the provision that a house has to have separate kitchen facilities, or if it doesn't have, it's a boarding house if there doesn't have separate kitchen facilities. But of course, when the guests rent the house, they will share the kitchen itself. So that we think that the boarding house issue really doesn't apply to what the proposal is, because it's a whole house rental rather than the rooms, and that we're here seeking the special exception, which would then give us, which would make it a not prohibited use. That completes my presentation for tonight. If the commission has any questions, I'd be happy to
Any
respond.
more questions of the applicant?
Yeah, I do. On the parking, Chip, there's a diagram here, black and white diagram that we got a couple weeks ago, and it numbers the parking places 1 through 6.
Yes.
I'm curious, it looks to me like parking space number 4 blocks the access for the garage for the owners.
Nick, would you like to respond to that?
Yeah, no,
Come up, you gotta come up here.
we've had guests up just the past weekend. There was 6 cars there, and you can comfortably get in and out of the garage with those 6 spaces that we left. But if it was something that you guys came out and looked at it and said, well, no, you can only have 5, then we'll just change it to 5. But we can comfortably do 6 cars at the moment.
This is Mick Roberts, by the way.
And how wide are those spots?
They're just, I mean, I have a SUV, Jackie has an SUV, and they can fit into those spots. And the area down in that space, it's big enough for an oil tank truck to go in there, turn around, and come back out the driveway. So it's quite a big area.
I'm just trying to understand what you presented here, so you're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
sure whether those are 9-foot wide spots or 10 feet or 8 feet.
Yeah,
or
I
just
didn't
whatever
measure them.
you
I
thought.
just know that when we've had cars there, it's been comfortable, but I didn't do the measurements, and I'm happy to do it if you needed it.
It's just an uncertainty now that we don't
Yeah.
know exactly how big those spaces are. But we understand what you're telling us. Thank you.
Jackie?
I don't have any new questions.
Kevin? Donna? Okay.
One more. I have another question. Now, I want to understand what the suggestion, or it's an assertion, and I understand it, Jim. There was a misunderstanding. You presented the wrong numbers 2 weeks ago on what they were applying for in terms of the size of the B&B operation, that you described it as 6 guests was what they were applying for, plus some unknown number of visitors. And what you're saying now is there's no visitors, there's just 10 guests. Is that true?
Well, the house can sleep 10. When we talk, there are 4 bedrooms.
And 10 doesn't include the owners.
No, the owners are in the accessory apartment.
Okay.
So but the guests that would be coming in, there are 4 bedrooms, there's a loft with 2 single beds, 3 full baths. That would accommodate 10 people. Generally, there are fewer than 6 cars if the house is full.
I'm not disputing your counting, I'm just trying to be
Saying it's
sure
a
we
difference.
understand what it is you've applied for, and your client is right here to attest.
Correct.
It's 10 guests.
Yeah.
10 guests, 6 spaces.
So
We
most
were-
of the time with 10 guests.
We were
you-
trying to understand at the last meeting what was meant by visitors.
Yeah.
And are you still asserting that visitors are a factor? You want visitors approved, some unknown number of visitors?
That's, we're looking to rent the house out to 10 guests. Most of the rentals are people coming in for either a wedding or a graduation. We're not looking to have extra people coming back to the house. That's not what we want. We're just looking to rent the house to 10 guests. Normally, if 10 people were to come, that would mean 5 cars, sometimes 4, never really 6. So on average, I think the car situation will be 4 cars. It's not going to be, and that's really not going to change the flow of traffic on Old Farms Road. If they leave, they're going to leave in 2 cars because they're normally going to go somewhere together. So it's just 2 cars leaving the house, not all 4 at the same
So,
time.
But
10
your
guests,
point is
0
about the
visitors.
visitors.
Right.
And I put the visitors in there because some of these folks come for family reunions or class reunions or whatever it may be. But they tend to be family events. And as such, they may have a barbecue in the back. There's a barbecue space. Other people may come in to visit the guests there. So I don't want to say that they would be just the guests, but the guests and any number of visitors would not exceed 6 cars. But I didn't want to say that there would never be a visitor to drive there to see the guests.
Okay, you just violated rule number 7. Feel free to use the barbecue outside area that is set up for our guests who stay at the home, is not to invite others or host a party.
That's my point to that is I don't want people that are staying there. I don't then want them to say, okay, we're going to have a party. We don't want that. We're trying to get away from what happened last time. We want to make sure that there's not a repeat or not a chance of a repeat of what happened last time. So we want to limit that to, look, if 4 people come over because they're swinging by and they've got to stop in, I'm not going to say you can't do that. But we don't want them to be saying, look, we're going to have an event here or a party of any sort.
And one of the things we said originally and reiterate is that it's not intended to have events, but there may be people that, if there's a family outing, some family members may come to visit whoever is staying there. But in any event, it would never be more than 6 cars.
I had another question for you, sir. I don't know if you're just answering one question, then you want to sit down, or...
No, that's all right.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wanted to inquire about the Airbnb material that we were given that reflects your home while it was being advertised on Airbnb. I don't know if that continues, but they describe you personally as a super host. And then they go on to say that you became a member with this property very recently, but there's also a statement to the effect that the host has 40 reviews for other properties. So I'm interested in whether this is one of many B&B type short-term rental properties you
that I have.
either currently or previously operated?
This is the second property that I've operated on, Airbnb.
So Airbnb is mistaken about the reviews for other properties. There must be somebody else with the same name.
No, I've had two properties, so the other one has a lot of reviews. This one has, I looked at it this morning, I think it had 3 reviews on this one and on 2 on another site.
Okay. Thanks.
So the other property does have a lot of reviews.
But it does say for other properties. It doesn't say 40 for another property. It gives the impression you are the operator of multiple properties.
2.
This one and another one.
And one other one, yeah.
And this is their full-time residence.
Right.
You know, they're-
Right, and this one's not currently in operation, as I understand it.
No, I did contact the town and ask if I could put the apartment on as a rental, as long as and I was told as long as it's a 30-day minimum. So that's what we've done. So currently we're renting it for 2 months. So it's not an overnight, it's not a nightly rental, it's a,
And of course, if they rent it for 2 months, that means there won't be any other traffic because they have to live in the home.
Thank you.
Okay. Donna?
So something we discussed with the Airbnb was when you have a primary residence, the owners are at the residence primarily. There's a difference between them being there when the rental actually occurs and them just having that as their primary residence. So do you plan on being
yes.
present
Yes, we
in
will.
your primary residence?
Yeah, we will be in the apartment. Whenever it's rented, we'll be in the apartment. And I think the rule is we can list one other person. So we will find that person, who it may be, and so there'll be one other person that could potentially be there, but we'll be there most of the time.
The one incident that didn't work out well for the neighbors did not work out well for the Roberts. And so there are lessons to be learned from that. And being on site protects them as well as the neighborhood.
So if you're going to do 6 days a month for the big house, so you're gonna live in the big house 6 days a month, and, the other
apartment.
days, and then the apartment's 6, so you're not gonna use the apartment but 6 days a month?
So we will move into the apartment for 6 days a month, which means we can't rent it, obviously, so we'll be moving in
So
there.
most of the time it will be empty.
Yes,
And when the apartment is rented, as it is now for,
we won't be renting the house. The thing, winter months, the house it won't get rented. It's mainly summer weddings, that's when it will be rented. It won't be rented probably for 4 months of the year.
In the accessory, the apartment is rented right now?
It is right now.
It has been for a month or?
For, a month and a half.
And so 30 days is the determining factor, more than 30 days.
Yeah.
That would apply to the house as well. Correct.
Correct.
And you're living in the house while the other one is being rented right now?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Could also be reversed.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. All right.
And did-
Any other questions?
Yes. Just, I'm done after this one. I just want to make sure, as long as you're here, we can
Yeah,
get this before us. That in August, the town code compliance officer sent a letter to 17 property owners in Simsbury who were operating short-term rental businesses, whether they were advertised on VRBO or Airbnb or whatever. The gist of the letter was to inform them that short-term rentals were not permitted under the Simsbury zoning regulations. I just want to make sure that you got one of these letters in August.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Or July, I guess was actually probably the mailing date. Thank you.
Okay, are we ready?
Are there any other?
Okay. Anybody from the public like to speak to this application? Yes?
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. My name is Brian Smith. I'm an attorney with Robinson & Cole, and I represent 8 of the owners who live on 5 Gates, which is directly across the intersection.
We're aware of that.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. And so I have a letter, which is, although it looks very thick, mostly it's photographs and some exhibits I'd like to hand out, and then I'm not going to read the whole thing. I'm just going to summarize it. But I would like to give the original, and then I've already given Attorney Houlihan a copy. The original to
Thank you. Is this different than last time's letter?
Was that?
Is this different than last time's letter?
Yes, it is. I'm addressing different points. Also, or amplified.
That's a lot to digest.
So, but the letter basically just amplifies some of the reasons we are, based on what happened at the last hearing, we wanted to respond to some of the things that were raised by the applicant at the last hearing. And actually tonight was a good example of one of the concerns we had, which we list in the first paragraph under amplification of reasons for opposition. And that is that, as Attorney Houlihan was describing the typographical error in the application where they were requesting 6 guests and now they meant to ask for 10 guests. When he started his sentence, I thought that they were going to try to do a compromise with us and reduce the number of guests. And I've been doing this for a very long time, and rarely do I hear it advance and increase during the course of an application. But that's what we have tonight. And one of the examples that I hesitated to bring up, but now I will, and is in my letter, is that there was an old advertisement that for this particular property, it's an Airbnb. The Simsbury tax assessor finds that there's 4 bedrooms and 3.5 baths. But it was advertised on the Airbnb a while ago as 6 bedrooms available in 4 bathrooms. So it's just a question for us, a great concern for us. What is it that is being asked of the commission and of us, of my clients who are living next door? So that's one of the concerns we have. The other concern is that I had the opportunity to see Attorney Houlihan's May 31st letter about the boarding house and how, well, this really wouldn't apply, or if it applies, it's not really relevant because the whole house is going to be rented at one time. I'm not sure how you can enforce that. It's a bed and breakfast, and the common sense definition of a bed and breakfast is there are many guests. They may or may not be related. I don't know how you would know that. They generally rent rooms, and a classic boarding house is a communal location for a kitchen, which is exactly what this is. So it's something that they didn't really ask for a boarding house because I don't think they were focused on that part of the regulations, but that's what you have here. And yes, it's prohibited unless it's specifically permitted. They're asking now for 10 people, and apparently they may be asking, I'm not sure if they're asking for a boarding house permission on top of a bed and breakfast. I think this application is not really very clearly defined, and it's worrisome because how you regulate this is very important. The bed and breakfasts that were permitted all predated your boarding house regulations, and so as you know, once you change the regulations, you've grandfathered them, and that's fine. They can operate just fine. But now you have a different situation, and you need to look at it based on your new regulation that you crafted. And I think it fits the definition, and I think this is a classic example of a location where it should not be permitted. And I'll go on as to why in a minute. But the other thing is that even if it's presuming that, well, the boarding house regulations really don't apply, I'm not conceding that for a moment, but if you were to accept that and look just at Article 7 as they applied for, you have to go back to Article 5, where they have the list of standards that they need to meet. And I think that they don't meet those standards. They simply don't meet a standard, for example, where it's a business, a personal business, can only be conducted by mail or telephone. I don't see how a bed and breakfast in this day and age can be just mail and telephone. It's operating right on site. And no pedestrian or automobile traffic other than normally generated by the residents. They've just described here that there may be 6 additional cars. I don't see how this is in compliance with a home occupation that you use for all the other home occupations that you look at in Simsbury. So on those 2 standards alone, I think it fails, even if you were to set aside the boarding house question. The other part of this is Article 7, Section 10, which is sort of the general standards for special permits that you have. There's a whole list of those. And, 10A says the need for the use, and then 10B is the existing character of the neighborhood. And I would submit, as you know, there have been numerous letters and testimony by neighbors at the last hearing and since the last hearing submitted that the proposed use is neither needed nor desired, and in their view will adversely affect the character of the community. The other issue, of course, is 10E, which is possible circulation problems on existing streets. Now, Attorney Houlihan made the statement that in the last 5 years there's been no accidents. I think one of my clients pointed out that the prior owner had a mirror on to help assist that individual to get in and out of their property, but they lived there. They were familiar with that property. They're not guests coming in for 1 or 2 days or a week. So it's a very different aspect. So we still have some concerns about that. Also, there's, why this is so long, there's 16 photographs taken by Mr. DeVivo of also showing, and it's labeled, each one of the 16 photographs is labeled, showing the driveway, the approach, the curves in the road. If you look at the photographs, there's 16 in the back. And it shows that they're quite sharp curves, going in both directions. You look north or south, and you can see pictures from the driveway of 45 Old Farms to 5 Gates. And then there's a picture, which is number 7 of 16, is one of my clients at 44 Old Farms, and you can see how close it is, because that photograph was taken from across the street at the property line of 45. So this is right on, they're really close by. And then there's a photograph taken from the street of the existing vehicles at 45, and some more photographs of the continuing curves. So that's another issue for your consideration, is that there are concerns here, I think legitimate concerns about, when you have new people coming in, can they handle the traffic? I hope they could, but I think this is a use that, when you take this as a totality of the circumstances, it's really appropriate at this location. And I think the other thing is that we had a letter from Mr. Kaler of RE/MAX stating in his opinion that 5 Gates Farm, which is across the street, and that's just one example, that his belief is that it would decrease the value of that property should this bed and breakfast be approved. And that goes, again, to your standards of, is there going to be some adverse impact in the immediate area? So it's not just the neighbors saying so, it's a professional who is being asked the question and is willing to give a response to this commission. So I think those are a quick summary of the letter, but I think that this is an application that seems to be, one, not well organized, because we're not even exactly sure what is being asked of this commission, and 2, to the extent we do understand, we don't think it's a good idea based on all the things that were said at the last hearing, which I'm not going to recount, and and the issues that we've raised tonight. And the fact that now they're asking for even more guests, and I'm not sure I understood the answer to the visitor's question, although I think I'm not sure what it is. So I don't know how many people will really actually be there. They mentioned that they may have weddings, and they had an event this last weekend at the property so that they had a view of how many cars were there. Well, this is an ongoing issue, and it sounds to me like either they're renting to 10 guests, or they're going to be renting to several guests when they move back and forth between the apartment and the main house. And I think it's just too intense a use at that location in this rural character of this neighborhood. And for all those reasons, on behalf of the families I represent, we're asking that you deny this application for the reasons we've presented.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Questions for the attorney?
I have a question, but it's kind of for the neighbors.
Sure, they're all here.
So they have somebody who's renting there right now, has been there for over a month. Can one of the neighbors speak to that and how that has been going?
I don't know how, I'm not sure what
I'm not sure that
you
we
want.
should be asking them.
Oh, okay.
I have two, maybe
Is that
I have two.
not- Sorry,
Two
Jay,
neighbors will speak.
sorry, I was told no. I
No.
apologize. It's my fault.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
We're asking you to comment on the application
Yes,
in
and
public,
that's not,
and
right.
it's not a dialogue. So-
Right. I mean, if you want, I mean, I can certainly ask them what the impact has been or what they think it is, but that's
I
fine.
would like to ask if other people have public
Yes, that's
comment.
fine.
So, anyone else like to speak to this application now? Ma'am, please come up and state your name. I think you were here last time. Pardon?
I always pick the farthest seat for some reason. Hi, my name is Lori Boyko. I live at 15 Oakhurst Road in Simsbury. I am not one of the neighbors. I don't live
Right.
in that vicinity. I was here last time,
Correct.
and I spoke, and I've been a Realtor for over 20 years and a mortgage loan officer, and lived in this town equally as long. And I've given a lot of consideration to both sides and the many points that were made since the last meeting, because I really am trying to think this through and put myself in your shoes and what you need to think about. And the owners of the property, I don't know, but they seem like really nice people, and they made some good points, and I wanted to think through what they had to say. Really sympathetic to their desire to turn their property in, well, really continue using their property as an income-producing endeavor. I was speaking to a gentleman in Granby last week who owns a small two-bedroom cottage with no kitchen in it that he rents out on Airbnb, and he told me he makes $40,000 a year. So, in that little cottage. So, we're not talking about insignificant sums of money here, which is why I can understand why people care about probably paying a lot of money for attorneys. But the reality is, they're not really looking for a special exception. There was a special exception granted on this property, I think it was in 2014, to allow the accessory dwelling unit. And the way those minutes that I read went said that the accessory dwelling unit was already created or built, constructed, when the Glicks then bought the property and applied for it to become a legal accessory dwelling unit. So that exception was sort of backed into, if you will. It already existed, so it's not, no harm, no foul, let's let them continue doing it. So now we're here because there have been problems because they've already rented out the property.
Can you
Okay, I'll get
address
to the point.
the
Okay, I'll get to the point.
application that's in
So,
front of us?
My concern is that they're not really asking for special exception, they're asking for a total change in use. It's a residential area, and they're asking to make it a commercial property. They are currently using another property on Dogwood as an Airbnb that they rent out similarly to large groups. They do not live there. It is on Airbnb right now, this minute, for 2-night minimum stay. They've had multiple rentals, as evidenced by their reviews, their 41 reviews on Dogwood. That's the property you were asking about. It's actually on Dogwood Lane, stating that people were there for the weekend. So my concern is that if you allow, originally it was a 3-bedroom B&B, there's not a whole lot of ability to contain what they do there. The rules keep changing. Is it 2 bedrooms? Is it 5 bedrooms? Are there 4 people? Are there 10 people? We might have extra guests, we might not. And the issue with zoning is it runs with the property, not with the people. So while they may have the best of intentions, and that may be their primary residence, although Dogwood isn't and that gets rented out, what do the next owners do? Then the next owners inherit a B&B zoned property. And it just sets a really slippery slope, and now we're asking for a special exception to a property that's already had a special exception. So I would encourage you to please vote no on this matter.
Thank you. Okay. Are there other people who would like to add to the, Sure.
Pete Herron, 5 Gates Farm, and I won't bring up everything that I brought up at the last meeting, but you're welcome. But I would say, just again, I would like to say that I don't think any of us who moved into the neighborhood moved in to have any type of commercial property near us at all. And I think in talking to each other, that we all agree and believe that had there been a commercial entity in 45 Old Farms, we would have thought twice about moving into the neighborhood. It's just different. We didn't move in with the expectation of a commercial property. We like the residential feel, the rural feel of the neighborhood. And frankly, I guess what I'm really concerned about is if you don't rent in the winter months, even though that's one, I guess, long weekend a month, that would then mean that you're going to rent for 2 long weekends in, late spring, summer, and fall or more. I also worry that it's in conjunction with things like graduation events, weddings, and other type of events, and that I'm not sure we're going to stop at 10 people. I don't know whether 10 max people or 10 people staying in the house plus 25 more guests, but we didn't move into the neighborhood to experience parties every other weekend at a rental property across from 5 Gates Farm. So I just wanted to say that again, but I would also say as far as the person that is there now, I'll be honest with you, I think it's one person. I haven't heard boo. I think there's maybe one more car in the driveway, but I think there's a whole difference between one person there and 10 people and maybe catering to graduation parties and weddings and other type of events. So that's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
My name's Corey Zielman. I live at 44 Old Farms Road, probably the house in closest conjunction and with the longest history. With that barn was the original barn from back in 1780 when my house was built. I've lived in that house in my current residence for 21 years. So I have known every owner from Dunny Barney to the Eilers to the Glitz and made attempts to befriend the new neighbors, but they're not around very much. But some of the points that came up that seem to be relevant to tonight's hearing are about the driveway issue. And I can say, other than Dunny, who seemed very happy with his, he didn't even have a paved driveway. He liked the dirt driveway. The Eilers, when they moved in, after a few months of living there, they were like, oh my God, we had no idea the driveway was such an issue. They got a sign put up on the town on Old Farms Road that talked about the blind curve or the blind driveway because pulling out of the driveway scared them so much. And they also installed a mirror to help them see the oncoming traffic. The next owners, the Glicks, also had concerns. Again, I don't think anybody realizes until they move in how, steep and turny that driveway is coming out. And they actually hired people to try and widen the driveway to make it easier to get out and have a better viewpoint, turning left and right. The contractors who came in, because of the slopes on the side, it goes down into kind of a little trough runs with water, and it's just too steep on either side. There's no way to expand that driveway to make it any safer. So basically, that's where they're stuck. And so I just thought sometimes pictures can be deceiving. If Mr. Houlihan, I didn't see his pictures and seeing what they depicted, but just from living there, being in that driveway, knowing the previous owners and the issues they had with the driveway, there were real concerns. Also, in the 21 years, that I've lived there with every owner, it's always been a point of pride, that kind of rural feel, and you're buying into a farm and the farmland and the beautiful land preserved behind it. It just is kind of heartbreaking to see it turned into a business for everyone who lives there. And I think that's been reiterated by everyone who lives in that area. It's a special piece of this community. And I can see why they want to share that, but it really is a residential area, not a business place. So if you have any more questions, as I say, I feel like kind of the historian, having lived there for 21 years at this point. Time flies. But I love it, and I really hope it doesn't change. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes?
Hi, good evening. My name is Bob Finance. I'm a resident at 81 Old Farms, which is actually the next property on the same western side, north of the property in question. I think, it's come to my attention of what their ambitions were relative to this property, and I can fully understand why they'd like to share the beauty of that area, and it would be a successful bed and breakfast, I think. But I think as a homeowner and also someone who moved to that area for much of the same reasons that we just heard about, making it a residential area and a beautiful home for my family. We've been there 20 years. I'm just frankly concerned about what it would do to property values. I think a commercial property there in that location would just set a precedent for additional properties to consider the commercial viability of their own properties, and I think that would put all of the homeowners at risk in terms of the value of their homes. So I would ask the board to please deny this application. Thank you.
Thank you. Excuse me. Anyone else from it's a big group there. A lot of you spoke last time, I know. Ika.
Somebody in the back.
Ika? You don't have to be from that group, I'm sorry.
You have to be from the public.
You have to be from the public. Are you from the public?
So my name's Ika Scully. I live at 29 Notch Road in West Simsbury. We opened up our house to be in Airbnb resident opportunity about a year before we got the cease operations. We were one of the 17 letters. So I like to use Airbnb when I travel. I find it's a better visit to a town when you're with the resident of the town where you're going. That's what opened us up to being an Airbnb host, because we'd like to offer that to people coming to Simsbury. And many people who come back to Simsbury are people who used to live here, or they're connected in some way to Simsbury, and there's just a shortage of nice places to stay. So I have a house with extra rooms, so we opened it up. I'm all of our, well, it was about a year, so we've had about 6, 7 visits. They've all been quite interesting people, all respectful, all gracious. I have 2 rooms. Most Airbnb situations are 2 rooms in a house, not 10. I'm not here to support or oppose the application that's here, but the rest of us 16 Airbnb hosts are suffering because of this. And I think the town is suffering if you deny Airbnb opportunities. I guess I should also say we reside in our house when people come. We don't open it up to visitors when we're not there. We also live on a couple acres, so we're not in a typical resident neighborhood. I don't know if that makes a difference.
We're in the process of considering recommendations with respect to Airbnbs. This is not an Airbnb application, and so this particular application is really the thing we need to have comments on.
Okay, so I'm not here to support or deny that,
Okay.
but I would like to
Like to
shed a little
support
light on
Airbnb.
the rest of this story.
Thank you.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, I have a few. My name is Tom Finn. Tara is my wife, and we're residents at 7 Five Gates Farm. I won't repeat many of the comments that have been raised, but I think that it bears emphasis on the fact that this is a residential neighborhood, and the applicants are seeking to run a business that will bring in transient people, people that we know nothing about, people that we don't know the background of, people that when you have a home and choose where you're going to raise your family with your children, you have an expectation that it's a residential area. If the board were to grant the application, it transfers that to what is really a commercial area. And we have children, the neighbors have children, we're concerned, we don't know anything about who stays at the bed and breakfast. There's a school bus stop right at the corner of Five Gates and Old Farm. My son gets off there, he walks there, he gets on the bus there every day. I think that that is a point of emphasis that I would like the board to consider, which is when you have a residential area, the safety of having transient people several times a month that nobody knows anything about staying in what is a residential community is something that poses a risk, is something that was not bargained for by the residents, and is not something that the board should allow. And with that, I'll conclude, but I wanted to make that one point. I don't want to repeat anything else that's been said, and I thank you for your consideration and for your time.
Thank you.
Just wanted to give a short response to a number of items that have been mentioned.
Sorry, Chip,
I'm sorry.
go ahead. It's a public hearing.
The purpose here is not to create Party Central. It's not to create events. The commission has the authority to stipulate a number of conditions for any kind of application that would have. We have indicated that there would be no events held. That would be an appropriate condition to place in the granting of any special exception. It might also be, because so much of what we're talking about, or what the neighbors are concerned about, has a degree of speculation, that you could have a trial period, say of 3 years, to see what, and have them reapply in 3 years to see whether the experience has been dreadful, whether it has been a non-event for them. Because the use to be made is really no bigger than a holiday weekend that they had this past weekend. They live there as their full-time house. They don't want to destroy the neighborhood. They don't want, to ruin the neighborhood. The idea of transients coming through, I think, doesn't really, this isn't a boarding house. We're not getting transients to come by for a period of time. What all of us have people come and stay. We have no idea who the guests are in the neighborhood. But we expect people to take care of their own property. We expect people to make sure that the neighborhood remains safe. The Robards will be living in the house. They don't want undesirable folks coming in that are going to trash their house. And frankly, that is the protection for the neighborhood and for the Robards, that the property will be cared for by them and not subject to misuse, to noise late into the night, to no weddings will be held there, as I think it was suggested, no events to be held there. And so the opportunity for the commission is to devise appropriate conditions to make sure that the property is operated as represented, that it does not create problems in the neighborhood, and that it preserves the neighborhood. There is an opinion that was submitted saying, oh, this would be bad for property values. But that's all the opinion says. It doesn't identify any other circumstance. It doesn't identify any factors that went into that evaluation. It doesn't provide any detail of analysis of similar situations. I know there is a concern, but the opinion that we have is a bald opinion without any substantiating facts behind it, anything to provide us with guidance to mitigate things. It is simply an opinion. The history of this building is interesting because there has always been some commercial element here. Years ago, Donnie Barney had to contested with the zoning officials because he had animals, farm animals there, and the neighbors were concerned about that. That got resolved because that had been the history of the property. Then he had an art studio there, and that was approved, and that eventually became the accessory apartment. But there has been a commercial history in the past. That has not seemed to impact the value of the property in the area. It's not, the prior commercial use isn't that well known. Paying attention and listening to the concerns about the traffic, I would point out picture number 6 attached to Attorney Smith's letter. Because this photograph was taken sometime last week, I think it was. And picture number 6, I think shows a reasonable view, and the picture that I have actually shows cars coming along that way. But there is a bush that we see by the post office box. That bush has been removed since this picture was taken, just as an element to increase the visibility along that way. I don't think, according to this picture, that if you were at the end of the driveway, that bush would be a block. But as you approach the end of the driveway, you might be looking through that bush. And because of that reason, Mr. Robards has since removed it, so it's no longer there. The Robards do not want to have safety hazards. They do not want to have transients who are dangerous to the neighborhood. They want family units to celebrate an historic piece of property. And they want to do it in a responsible way that doesn't damage their property, that doesn't threaten the neighborhood, and actually helps to improve the neighborhood. The usage on these occasions isn't much greater than having a holiday weekend at the house. And so we asked that the commission approve the application and do so with conditions that are appropriate and reasonable, that give the neighbors some comfort, maybe give it a trial period, I'll suggest 3 years, that they would have to come back and reapply. And then we would have this discussion based upon true experience as to whether there have been any problems, whether anything did get out of hand. Because there was certainly one problem before, but there was also another problem where they had a family wedding. And everybody in the neighborhood is entitled to have a family wedding on their property. So if we have the period of experience, it'll let the neighborhood evaluate. It'll allow the Roberts to decide whether it's useful for them, and it'll give the neighbors an opportunity to return if they have complaints about how it's been managed. And so we would ask that the commission approve it and apply conditions that would be beneficial to the town. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Ready to close it?
No, you're not.
Can I just make one quick
Sure.
statement?
Go
As
ahead.
an historian? In all the years that I lived across from Dunny Barney, he was an art collector, and he invited people in to see his art. He lived there years that I didn't. Perhaps prior to my moving in, he ran a commercial art studio, but he was an art collector. Case in point, he brought people in to see his art. It wasn't a commercial business. Animals, no one ever complained as far as I know about the animals. Donkeys.
Please stick to this application.
Okay, I'm just
It's not
want
a
to.
debate.
Yes, so I just
Okay.
wanted to correct that.
Thank
that
you,
it-
but
the history is
We'll
not a
be here
commercial.
forever if we're
Yeah,
correcting
it's
things.
not a commercial, and, yeah, it
Sorry.
changes, and it's the zoning, like changing it to a commercial is really the case in point. That it's residential.
Someone else?
How you doing? I'm actually here to protect my own interest.
Excuse me.
I'm Bill Sheriffs. I live at 6 Dogwood Lane. Another property, I believe, owned by him, another Airbnb, and I'm just against it because I'm cautioning that I feel like it's a slippery slope, and that at 9 Dogwood, I've come across many problems. Speeding in and out, drunk drivers coming in and out at all hours. I have twin 7-year-old boys, and I have stopped several drivers for speeding during regular hours when my kids are playing in the street. I oppose this because I don't want to set the precedent that he could then go and do the same at Dogwood, because there's no one living there unless it's rented. There's no person supervising the guests or anything. It's just, come the weekends, it's a party house. I didn't move to a cul-de-sac for that. I know it, it's a slippery slope if you approve this.
Okay,
Could you just
thank you.
repeat, what is your address?
6 Dogwood
And you're reporting on experience
at 9,
with the 9 Dog, okay.
the other Airbnb.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Stephen Sutton, 45 Berkshire Way. Just wanted to put a short note that obviously they're not looking for transients, but I think that is the definition thereof. People who are staying there for a short period of time do not exactly treat the property in the same manner in which the residents, and if I had children in the area, I would be very concerned. So I urge you to please vote no on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
One in response to Attorney Houlihan's suggestion that this commission approve the application subject to a 3-year review period. The neighbor, my clients have already had experience, and I think all the evidence that we have put before you suggests that this is not an appropriate use at this location. And 3-year trial period is not necessary for them to determine that they've already had considerable experience already.
Thank you. Are we ready to close this?
I think so. Oh, go ahead.
Mike?
Yeah, I just want to ask the commission, do you have enough documents, do you have questions answered in order to make a decision? Because once you close the hearing, you cannot take any new testimony, documents, etc. So,
What do you think?
just think about that before you.
I'm all set.
I have a lot of documents.
So you're good?
More documents we don't need. Reading the ones we got, that's what we need.
You ready? Are we ready for a motion?
I think so.
All right, Mr. Chairman, I lost my agenda here.
We're just closing it, not voting on it.
Yeah, we're closing.
Right,
Okay.
right, just closing it.
Yeah, I move that we close the public hearing on application number
1922.
1922.
I'll second.
Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Motion carries. Public hearing is closed. We'll move on to the next public hearing.
Application 1927 of Steve and Lisa Feldman, owners for a special exception pursuant to Article 7, Section M.7.b, for the replacement of an existing non-conforming accessory structure in the floodplain on the property located at 90 Riverside Road.
Hi, thank you. I'm Steve Feldman. We're looking to replace a pre-existing garage that houses an antique vehicle and with a nicer structure. The blueprint of it is identical. It's 12 by 20.
If it's identical,
No, it's the size. I'm saying the space, the
Footprint.
footprint. Thank you. Appreciate that.
How long has that structure been there?
Almost 4 years.
4?
4 years.
Oh, okay.
It's a canvas, right?
Correct.
It's a temporary structure.
oh, it's just.
Was Jackie recusing herself? Did she just?
I think you should note for the minutes that she left the meeting. She should be noted in the minutes that she
Left the meeting. But she didn't say she was recusing herself. I don't know that.
She's going to be back in a minute.
We'll get it back in a minute. We can have a
Yeah, let's hold
pause.
with the pause.
Let's have a pause in the meeting.
Maybe just,
Sorry.
Okay, that's fine.
just to clarify the record, the reason why Mr. Feldman's here this evening is because the property is located in the floodplain. Under the regs, a new structure requires an approval, a special exception in the floodplain. So what he's doing, he's replacing that temporary structure with a permanent carefree shed. So that's what triggered the public hearing. If this property was not within the floodplain, and it was a simple replacement like to like, he would just be dealing with the zoning officer. It would not be before
Even
the
if you're going
commission.
from temporary to permanent?
Because there's, really from a zoning perspective, there's nothing temporary. Structure's a structure, whether it's temporary in the sense, this thing, it's a canvas hoop shed that he's replacing with a permanent carefree shed. So,
Jackie has returned. Okay. So we will restart.
Steve Feldman.
No problem.
Not at all. I'm Steve Feldman. We live at 90 Riverside, and this application is to replace a inferior garage with a better structure that has the same footprint in terms of square footage, just to the side of the home.
picture of it in the staff report,
Yep.
Yes.
right? Okay,
And
everybody see
the
that?
replacement looks very nice.
Thank you.
Looks nicer than the canvas thing.
The truck's even nicer, sir.
Yeah,
What
what's
your,
there?
what
It's
your
a
story?
41 Dodge.
41 Dodge?
Her name's Betty.
Betty. Betty's gone.
Is it a Dodge Power Wagon?
No, it's smaller. It's a half-ton.
And just to clarify, he would not have to get approval if this wasn't in a special flood hazard
Correct.
for this, so that's the only reason
That's what triggers.
it's coming before us.
Yeah.
And Mr. Glidden has made me very aware of having the hurricane anchors for it, and what did you call those vent things?
Flood vents.
Flood vents. So we will obviously comply with anything that has to be done to the
The
structure,
water can
Yeah.
easily get out.
which I hope never happens, but
Right, but then you're
it's part
prepared.
of living there.
Betty won't like it.
No.
No.
Shouldn't try that. Okay, questions? Any more questions?
I don't have any questions. I also compliment, the picture's a very nice
Yeah.
representation. I think your neighbors will appreciate the investment.
The upgrade.
I think so too. Thank you.
Anyone from the public care to comment on this application?
Thank you very much.
Silence. Are we ready to close it?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we close the public hearing for application 1927.
1927. Your second?
Second.
Second by Jackie. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Public hearing is closed.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We'll consider
You still
this in
have-
a little while.
Thank
We'll
you.
come back.
We'll come
Okay.
back and consider the application.
Thank you.
Okay, next public hearing.
Yeah, application 1929 of Ann Kadala, owner for special exception pursuant to Article 7, Section C.1 of the Simsbury zoning regulations for a home occupation, allowing for a hair salon to be run out of the garage on the property located at 12 Colonial Drive, Weetag.
Thank you.
Okay, good evening. My name is Ann Kadala, and I live at 12 Colonial Drive in Weetag. I am a hairstylist in town currently. I rent space at Mitchell's, and I've been a small business owner in town for 14 years. But I now have 4 children, so I'm just looking to run my hair salon, just me, one small chair, out of my attached garage. I have a wide driveway that fits 4 cars. I've spoken to my neighbors. They seem very positive about it, and many of them are my clients. We've lived in our house for 9 years. Last year, it used to be a 1,000 square foot ranch. We turned it into a 2,300 square foot colonial because we love our neighborhood. So I'd never want to do anything negative towards it. And I just want to run it out of my house so I can keep being in business and continue to be a small business owner. It'd just be a little easier for me because I'll be right there with my kids. And that's it.
Okay.
And your hours of operation seem fairly limited. 3
Yes,
days a
they
week.
are limited. Yeah, my mom watches my kids for me only 2 days a week, so those are the only 2 days I work, including I also work on a Saturday.
And I didn't see, were you requesting any signage?
I don't want a sign. Nope, I want my house to look exactly the way it does right now. The only thing I'm gonna put in, I guess that would look different from looking at it, is just a door on the side. Yeah.
Thank you. We read that.
And the door's on the side of the garage that faces the house?
Yeah.
It faces,
It faces a house.
could you also include in your comments, what is the square footage roughly of the area that you'll be using for your?
I think it's probably roughly 200 square feet. It's a small one-car garage.
You're gonna finish the whole garage?
I'm gonna finish the whole garage.
The
Yep.
garage door will stay?
I'm gonna keep, yes, the garage door.
And there's a door to the backyard right now.
Yes, and I'm gonna keep that as well. Yep.
Is there plumbing and electrical?
There is not currently, so we have a contractor that we've been talking to about putting that in.
Are you on
We actually, when
sewer?
we did our colonial, when we made our colonial, we took out our septic tank and connected to the town.
Okay, so you're connected to the.
Yeah.
But that would have to be reconnected or connected through the house?
Yes. Correct.
You gotta go up here.
I'm sorry. Name and.
I'm Sam Cadella, I'm Annie's husband, and we would be putting in a one of those circular pumps underneath, like a water structure, pump over into the attic and then down into our basement. That would be
Injector pump.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yep.
Thank you.
And you had contacted the health district?
I did,
They
and
said-
they said they were fine as long as you were fine. Yep.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm all set.
Any of us?
Any more questions?
Yeah. Anyone from the public wish to speak to this application? Yes, sir.
Good evening. Good evening to the public also. My name is Carl Garrett. I live at 16 Colonial Drive, and I am happy to say that they are great neighbors. And anything that they ever put in will be fantastic. They have a beautiful house. They take care of it. They're an asset to the community. They're an asset to our neighborhood. She takes care of the children. The children are delightful. Nothing is better than sitting out on the patio and listening to the kids play in the next yard. And you can hear them. They're very active. And it's beautiful. And I would think nothing of having them have a business there, because it's only one and the traffic will not be interfered with at all. There won't be any problem whatsoever. The neighbors that I've talked to, they have no problem with it whatsoever. And I would vote, if I were you, I would vote for it. But I would ask you to vote yes for this application.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm his wife.
You can come up here too.
Let me help her up. She has a walking.
I'm
Sorry.
Beverly Malik. I also live at 18 Colonial. I've known Annie for quite some time. Our children went to school together. She has always been an asset to every community that she's lived in. And I'm so pleased when you guys moved in. And my husband left out. Her husband also helps watches the kids. So everybody, they've really bonded the community. And since they've moved in, the community's tighter. The kids are all friends. The parents are all friends. Couldn't ask for better people. And I hope you pass this.
Thank you. Sorry we made you.
Oh, that's all right. I'm happy to speak for you.
Any more comments from the public?
Actually, I concur with everyone here about Annie. My
Name
name's Lisa
and
McLaughlin.
address, please.
Sorry, I'm Lisa McLaughlin, 4 Colonial Drive on the other side of the neighborhood.
Okay.
I can attest, we've only been there since 2015, not as long as everyone else, but since we moved in, Annie and her husband, and I'm sorry, I'm horrible with names, everyone else in the neighborhood, they're our go-to people. Our daughters are actually in the same class, and I can attest for how they are as parents and how I've seen them as citizens and neighbors. They're great people, and I totally support them having their business there. I think it's a great work-life balance, and I hope it helps them, and I hope you guys vote yes.
Thank you. Anyone else care to speak to this application?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we close the public hearing on application 1929.
Second by Donna. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Application, the motion carries. Public hearing is closed. One more.
Yes, application 1930 of Mark Deming, agent.
Time out.
We're gonna take a break.
No, I am
He's
on
not
the
good.
board of the
Excuse himself.
Performing Arts Center, so you have to step in
Okay.
and do both jobs.
See ya.
All right. Okay, the next public hearing is application 1930 of Mark Deming, agent, Town of Simsbury owner, for a special exception pursuant to Article 7, Section M.7.b for the construction of permanent sound towers in the floodplain on the property located at 22 Iron Horse Boulevard.
So I'm not Mark Deming. Mark is traveling, and my name is Bill Clegg. I live at 32 Brick Drive, and I'm in Mark's place. So as you all have lived in town, you know that we've had the Performing Arts Center for quite a while, and we typically rent sound towers, and we have slowly been trying to find things that we don't have to rent any longer, and we can have as permanent facilities. So we have, Suzak has designed for us nice sound towers that we would like you to approve. And so really what we're looking for is an administrative zoning permit is required for placement of structures within the floodplain. And an expansion of the limit of the site work for the proposed structures requires approval from the zoning commission.
So these would go to the left or right of the stage?
They go basically in the same position where the temporary sound towers go now.
Gotcha. And again, is this before us because it's in a floodplain? Okay, just to clarify.
And the applicants developed foundation plans where they're taking into consideration proper anchoring methods in order to attach these towers to the ground. I mean, they're, for the most part, the only other thing that comes into play from flood management standpoint is utility connections with these things. But they have accommodated all the good floodplain management principles in developing the plans. And as the floodplain administrator, I issued give a favorable recommendation on this.
Did the town engineer have any role in review of the application?
They've been working with various other town agencies as part of the work that's ongoing at the Performing Arts Center. So yes, this was at other levels. So this is one of their first steps that they had to do, is getting the approval from the zoning commission.
So I do have two questions. One is, so how does the power get there? Is it underground to the base of the tower and then
Yes.
up to the tower? Okay.
Yes, and a lot of the power is already existing because we already have sound towers there. So we're just going to connect into where a lot of the power already is there.
Okay, so that's underground out to where it connects now to the temporary towers?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, and second, what have you done to prevent unauthorized people from climbing?
So there is a ladder that is used for maintenance, but it has a piece that gets flipped way high that gets locked into place, so that can't be as easily done.
Okay,
obviously.
so we're seeing it here, that's when it's down. Is that right?
The ladder.
It's upside down.
Oh.
Now it looks so much better, right?
Perspective. So way high, like it's over 6 feet or something when it's flipped up?
It is about 9 feet off the ground.
Perfect.
Before you could reach any kind of ladder at all.
Okay. Any other questions from the commission? Anybody else in the audience wish to speak to this?
Would they be lit
Not,
when they're not in use?
no. Only,
So
really only when there's a performance.
just like even keep an eye on it.
I mean, the whole facility for the most part is dark when it's not in use.
So it's sound and lighting?
Yes. And again, I'm sure you've all been to the concerts, it's really just replacing the temporary ones that we have there, we rent on a regular basis, just doing something more permanent. And we have a donor who's willing to help us to fund this.
Okay, we
There are no other
ready to close?
questions. Yeah.
I don't have any other questions.
Well, somebody else
Keep up the good
besides me
work.
want to make a motion?
Thank
Do
you.
you want me
Looking
to
forward to
make a motion to close?
Right.
And this is
No,
not,
sure, you've been giving them all
not
to
technically
1930.
as public hearing, but,
Yes.
okay. I make a motion to close application 19-30 of Mark Deming, agent for the town of Simsbury, owner, for a special exception.
Okay, we're closing the public hearing.
Yes.
Just to clarify that, you said
Oh, so,
application.
I was
Okay.
reading it.
Yeah. You second, who second?
I'll second.
All right, Donna second. All in favor?
Aye.
Just make sure you're all buying your beach boy tickets for middle of August.
All right, now we gotta wait for the chairman to come back.
Okay.
Raise.
What's that? Yeah.
Much quicker.
Much quicker when I'm not here. Okay, good.
I weren't gonna say anything.
You guys are fired. Okay, we're on to the next application.
The fun part.
Now, we have, what do we got here?
Starting on the other page though.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, I know.
1921.
He's looking at the
But-
notes.
You want to do 1921?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, consider the application 1921 of TJ Donahue for a text amendment to section, Article 10, Section K, Table 10. Do we have any staff comments on that?
You do. There's a summary, there's a staff report with a summary of the documentation that was provided, along with, if you were to approve the application, we're suggesting an effective date of July 1st, 2019 for the regulation change.
Okay. Bruce, any comments on this?
Not at this moment.
Okay. Jackie?
What's your last chance, Bruce?
Next to last chance. Okay. If we have a motion, we'll have some discussion possibilities.
I think I have any questions now. I think, like Kevin said, we'll have more questions when it comes for more detail.
What?
The site plan.
Yeah.
Oh, the site
Yeah,
plan.
yeah, we're only
Right,
doing
right.
the text amendment right now.
You're right.
Exactly.
We have a motion to approve the text amendment.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve application 1921 of TJ Donahue Jr. Esquire, agent, McLean Affiliates, Inc., petitioner for a text amendment to Article 10, Section K, Table 10, bulk area and site requirements of the Simsbury zoning regulations regarding maximum height for senior housing. The effective date for the text amendment is July 1st, 2019. Thank you.
I'll second that.
Second by Bruce. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 5-0. Thank you, Jackie. Okay. Application 1922 of Charles Houlihan for the special exception. My suggestion would be that we table the consideration of this application to give us, pardon
I
me,
have a memo for you guys. It just sets forth the standards that you guys have to consider for special exceptions under home occupations. This is just a guiding document for you guys. It's staff recommendation, due to the amount of public comment that we took in, and the additional information this evening that you guys postpone making a decision until the next meeting, so that you can appropriately look over the standards and adhere to the information that was provided.
Thank you.
thank you. So this in more words is recommendation
document.
that we read this. No, but there are the standards that have to be considered, and we really should very carefully look at each one of them, and staff can help us with that next time. So I think we need to give them time to digest what's been heard from the public hearing, and then we'll be in a better position to deal with it in 2 weeks.
So you're suggesting that we
Table.
Our decision.
Table our decision.
continue this matter
Continue the-
another 2 weeks?
Right.
Okay.
Continue the discussion of the application.
Do you want to make a motion for that?
If you agree with it, yes.
Okay, I don't
We
want
have
to
to
cut,
vote on-
I don't want to
I'm
cut
just
anybody
saying-
off.
No, I'm just saying, if that's the recommendation of staff, that's what I think is a smart thing to do.
Yes.
Because we got more material tonight.
We got more material tonight to look at.
Okay.
I would be in favor of making a motion, but I don't want to cut anybody off.
You can go make a
Go right
motion
ahead.
to just table.
I will make a motion to table application 19-22 of Charles Houlihan Jr., agent, for Michael and Jacqueline Robards.
Second.
Second by Kevin?
Yep.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so we table this application 5-0. Okay, application 1923, the applicant has requested that we table it.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I move that we table application 1923 until our meeting on June 17th.
That's correct.
Second by Donna, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries 5-0. The next application is also
yeah.
requested to table, it's the same.
Yeah, ditto. Mr. Chairman, I move that we table application 1924 until our meeting on June 17th.
Second.
Second by Donna, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. 5-0, it carries, it's tabled. Application 1927 of Steve and Lisa Feldman for a special exception for the replacement of the non-conforming structure. He's
He
not here.
left.
He left.
I'm happy to make a motion.
Okay. Fire away.
I make a motion to approve application 19-27 of Steve and Lisa Feldman, owners, for a special exception pursuant to Article 7, Section M.7.b, for the replacement of an existing non-conforming accessory structure in the floodplain on the property located at 90 Riverside Road. And this would be with the condition, number 1, of an administrative zoning permit. It's required for the placement of the structure within the floodplain, and 2, expansion of the limit of site work for the proposed structure requires an approval from the zoning commission.
Second.
Second by Kevin. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 5-0. Thank you. Okay. The next application is one in which I recuse myself. So,
You can abstain.
no, I'm told that there are case law where if you're going to make faces,
You can't even be here.
you can't be.
See you later. Bye. Mr. Substitute Chairman, can I make a motion?
You want to make a motion already?
Wait a minute, wait till I get out of second.
The back of his head, he can make expressions. Making a motion already? Haven't we talked about it?
This is for the roof
This is
structure.
a
Oh,
roof
this is the
structure.
other one, I apologize.
Yep.
Okay.
Hi.
Hi.
How are you? My name is Missy Denuno, and I am the Executive Director at Simsbury Meadows Performing Arts Center. Thank you for having me. I, too, am subbing for Mark Deming as they are away, and have had the pleasure of speaking with Mike Glidden as a follow-up to your last meeting, which I was not in attendance at, but I was briefed on. And I know there were a couple of items up for discussion, the first being, I think, the signage out front indicating that we had applied for this, for which I submitted my notarized document this evening, so we should be squared away on that. And I think the additional item for discussion was kind of the aesthetics of the structure itself. And I got to tell you, I'm an aesthetics girl, so I know where you're coming from. When we looked at this structure, we took a look at both aesthetics and functionality. So our goal is to get these chairs covered because we were using temporary tarps that clearly were not protecting them from the rain. So the roof structure provides protection for the overhead of the chairs themselves. Originally, the goal was to get it on the eastern side of the barn. However, the Conservation Commission came through with recommendations for the western side of the barn. With that in mind, we would be looking to put in temporary weather-rated panels that could be rolled up a la a tent style, so that we could function by getting our forklift equipment in and out with the pallets of chairs. And then those would then be rolled back down with a nice aesthetic feel to go with our barn, to cover it up so that when we're not moving the chairs in and out, everything's covered and out of sight from the public.
And what kind of material
Yeah,
or
what
color,
material?
or what would it look like?
I don't have a specific for you yet because we haven't figured out exactly what the material is. I know that it would be a soft good, so it's not going to be some type of hardwood or plastic or anything of that nature because it would have to be rolled up because it needs to move in and out in the evening time when we're putting those chairs back and forth. My guess would be that it would be some type of tarp type material because it would have to be somewhat resistant to water because obviously we all know on that property the rain can go sideways. But I don't have specifics or a specific design for you of what that material would look like.
And how big is how big are those openings?
So the opening on the side, so the north and south sides would be 16 feet, and then there are 3 openings at 12 feet each along the frontage. So you're talking about 5 panels.
And there would be some kind of mechanism that would allow this tarp to go up and down?
Correct. Again, don't know what that mechanism is because I'm not the project manager. However, I do know that the goal would be for it to be rolling up.
Is this something that we can
Table?
see a little? Yeah, it's like,
Get more information?
wait until we can see the materials and,
How they're gonna be rolled up and what it's gonna look like,
because
whatever
this,
that mechanism is?
Missy, do you think you can get that information to them in 2 weeks?
I will try my best to get in touch with the folks who are traveling where there's no cell service.
From my perspective, I didn't, because you're not gonna put chairs, you don't stack them all the way up. I mean, it's gotta be a limit.
No, these are pallets of chairs that are stacked 25 high. So there's 2 25 high piles of
All right,
chairs
so
on each
how
pallet.
high is 25 chairs relative to your podium,
Oh, gosh.
or to you?
We're probably talking about here.
Right, so I'm wondering, do we need to come from the top down, or can you put something from the bottom up? Because we're only looking to cover that, and I think it would look a little more natural if you didn't necessarily cover,
Yeah, but it's west, you're gonna get west,
yeah.
all the.
Well, they're not, are they putting the,
Well, our goal is we don't want weather to get in anyways.
Yeah, well,
So we would want to cover the
The original proposal was there
whole.
was not gonna be anything.
Yeah, it was gonna be open.
It was gonna be open, as the original proposal.
Oh, okay.
that's why we're asking to
Yeah, so
see
that's-
something because it's
Got it.
changed since it was last proposed.
So I'm thinking that you're not filling
I
the whole
understand.
space.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah,
That
whatever.
would be really helpful.
Okay, then take a motion here to table.
Oh, now I get to make a
I'll
motion?
make the motion to
Okay.
table. Table application
1928.
1928, until our next meeting on June 17th.
I'll second.
Thank you. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, boss. We could have it approved before he gets here, but.
Okay,
Came back.
I came back. We're ready for the next one. All right, the next one is application 1928, no, 1929, of Ann Cadella, for a special exception pursuant to Article 7, Section C1, for a hair salon in her garage. Comments, staff?
It was very nice to hear positive comments.
Your neighbors like you.
Yes.
It's a nice thing.
But the standards are the same. So
Yes.
that sheet that Robin handed out
Yes.
is the
Yes.
same
Definitely
sheet we
apply.
need to apply to this application.
Yep.
And so we are considering the need for the proposed use.
Yep.
We agree on that?
So when the application is for one chair only, then it can't change, correct, if it's approved?
You could stipulate that in your conditions
Yeah,
of
you can
approval,
add,
to make that clear.
and the motion I have is just suggested language, you can add or subtract anything to that. So you could say, it's for one chair, one
Wait a
employee.
minute, though, the
no al-
application's only for one chair and one employee. So if you approve the application, you don't need more conditions.
Right, but I'm just asking if then the approval is specific to that verbiage only, right?
You can go one step further, put it in the conditions as the approval, and then that's what's filed on the land record. So then down the road, like, if I were to purchase the house from the applicant, then, you know, my wife can't say, hey, I'm opening a two-person salon here with 3 chairs.
Right. Actually, and it's important to note that our records, our file records with the applications don't stay in our offices in perpetuity. There's a 10-year time frame, and then they can be discarded. So whatever's on that special exception that gets filed is really important.
Right.
So if it's something that you're concerned with.
Do we have a staff report on that? We have a
There's a staff report on
Yes.
that.
Yes, right there.
All right, well,
I would make one comment about the hours of operation. I would say that we shouldn't be specific about the hours. We should say they could have 3 days of 6 hours or 7 hours or whatever it
Being
is.
open?
Let them,
Operational?
yeah, it shouldn't be part
So
of the
the
special exception.
yeah, I'm not sure we have to limit it to 3 days.
Right,
You can take that condition out, and number 3,
we
if
can
you
take
want to
that
delete it
condition out.
entirely.
Okay,
You may have a wedding on a Friday and somebody wants,
that's fair.
Okay.
So that would
Sunday
come out and
before
maybe,
church.
and maybe add the 1 chair.
Oh, you know, I did,
Okay.
okay. Are we selling products?
I guess a salon does sell products, right?
That came up with another salon that we had.
You have to have product in your hair, or you can't leave,
not me.
right?
I don't have much hair.
So what are we trying to say about the product? So there is some retail sale of
There was some
product.
discussion about that. Yeah, okay.
But that's part of a salon. I mean, people aren't gonna be going in there just to buy it. They'll buy it
Right, I
because
would
they
think
got
they
their
would
hair
buy it
done.
when they're there.
Right, it just came up with the last
Yes,
salon, is
no,
what
no,
I'm
no,
saying. yeah.
it's a good point.
Okay,
Did you want to go more into the standards, or are you?
Yeah, no, I think we should just look more.
Oh,
we
okay,
went over. Character of the neighborhood is not be affected.
not changing.
Location of the main building, that's really not applicable. Height in buildings, relation to other structures is not applicable. Traffic circulation, I think there's
I think there's going to
no
be
issue
an
there.
increase.
There was a police memo on that.
No, that's the other one.
This is for
No,
the
this
other
is for
one.
the other
We're just
application.
reading the standards. It's okay, we're just reading the standards.
Okay. Availability of water and tank, we talked about
We
that.
talked about that.
Yep.
She's
And
not going to do a sign.
Not gonna do signs. And safeguards to project and,
The neighbors seem fine that it's not
Neighbors.
going to deteriorate the neighborhood.
I agree. We all
And
agree
no
on
one
that?
showed up to
Dispute
oppose it,
Right.
No others
which
moved
is-
in, right.
that's something.
Two different people showed up, Okay. How about a motion?
I think Jackie wants to.
Jackie?
Sure. So I'm gonna change this a little bit. I'd like to make a motion to approve application 19-29 of Ann Kadala, owner for special exception pursuant to Article 7, Section C.1 of the Simsbury zoning regulations for home occupation, allowing for a hair salon to be run out of the garage on the property located at 12 Colonial Drive in Weetog, Assessor's Map F16, Block 121, Lot 112, and this is Zone R15. The special exception approval is subject to the following conditions. 1, an administrative zoning permit is required. 2, an approval for the operation of a salon. And 3, this would be for 1 chair only.
Second?
Second by Kevin. Further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries 5-0. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, and we're down to our
New application.
new application.
Do you have to go for this?
Have to go.
Oh, you could-
Does
Does he?
He does.
You're gonna get your
See ya.
10,000 steps in.
Yep, you need to.
See ya.
You wearing your Fitbit?
Yeah, right. Credit for the steps.
Okay, the chairman has left the building. Next application is 1930 of Mark Deming, agent, Town of Simsbury owner for special exception pursuant to Article 7, Section M.7.b for the construction of permanent sound towers in the floodplain on the property located at 22 Iron Horse Boulevard.
Are we at the point to make a motion?
Yeah, we can make a motion and then discuss it.
Keep saying, okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve application 19-30.
No conditions?
No, I'll do conditions. I didn't know if we were discussing.
Make the full motion.
I'm going to make a motion to approve application 19-30 of Mark Deming, agent, Town of Simsbury, owner, for a special exception pursuant to Article 7, Section M.7.b for the construction of permanent sound towers in the floodplain on the property located at 22 Iron Horse Boulevard, Assessor's Map H09, Block 226, Lot 003A. This is zones SC-3 and SC-4, and it would be with the conditions: 1, administrative zoning permit is required for the placement of the structure within the floodplain, and 2, expansion of the limit of site work for the proposed structure requires approval from the zoning commission.
Okay, do we have any discussion on this?
I thought the description was full and complete. I don't have any questions.
And I think it's perfect need to not have to rent every year.
So I will second the motion.
Thank you.
Okay. While you guys are here, though, it would be good to, at some point, if you would give us kind of a plan for what you're going to do for all the future stuff. It'd be good to start to see. Yeah.
Working with the town on
Right.
that
Right, because we're kind of getting this piecemeal, and it'd be good to see where we're going to end up.
Appreciate that.
Any other discussion on this? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. No, so it's unanimous.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Where'd your Jake go?
He went for a walk. Is there anything else?
Do we have any correspondence?
No correspondence. You guys should have all had uploaded to your Dropbox, the draft zoning regs.
Very pretty.
What'd you think?
I saw the colors.
That's actually just to make it more user-friendly, so that categorizes the sections, so that someone who doesn't look at them like we do can kind of go, this is what I'm looking for, and then kind of be directed as an easy kind of visual.
So we're thinking next meeting, we're like 2 weeks behind. We're gonna get you that list of all the new or changes to the regs, kind of a cheat sheet, and then have a discussion. We have a few items that we want to bring up with you. One of them is agro-tourism. We'd like to have a discussion about that.
Did we send you guys the definitions, proposed definitions? I can't remember if we sent them to you yet, because we sent them to Bob D to look at. It's trying to differentiate between single-family, boarding house, hotel, motel, Airbnb, bed and breakfast, because they're so similar in our regs, that from a enforcement standpoint makes it extremely difficult sometimes to kind of pick and choose what's really going on. So we did send them off to Bob D. If we didn't send those out to you
I don't think
draft-wise,
so.
we'll shoot them out to you
Okay.
via
I don't
email,
do
just so you can start looking at them.
Because Bob's looking at it also from a fair housing perspective to make sure that we don't run afoul with federal law.
Right.
Which a lot of the regulations or definitions we picked up were based off of court cases.
Okay.
So it should pass the test, but we'll wait for Bob D to tell us that. We won't tell him.
And I haven't gone through them all, but is the Airbnb in the new, right?
No, so Airbnb.
Obviously, we're gonna have to
That's going to be handled by an ordinance,
Yeah, well,
not
we're gonna
us.
have to come back to that. So if you guys
We have to
remember,
recommend.
we kind of had talked about Airbnb, and we kind of recommended that maybe the ordinance was the way to go.
Right.
But you guys would have to approve that as a use in your regs. So based on sort of our current atmosphere, I think it it would behoove us to go back to that discussion.
Yeah.
And really kind of pin down and you guys actually take a vote on that, because you guys have never voted on it, we've discussed it
It's
at
gonna be
length.
coming up imminently.
And it is, yes, so we definitely, and if it is something that you wanna add into the reg as far as a use that goes then to the Board of Selectmen for an ordinance, you should do it at this juncture, so we will definitely bring that back up.
Thanks.
Are we at the end?
Any other things from them? No. Motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We gotta vote.
Second. Or Donna second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? One.